Well, hello again. My name is Monty Patterson, and I want to welcome all of you to this Thursday's edition of Wise Women Weekly, presented to you by the incredible organization Enlightened Networking. We come here to you all every single Thursday at 2 p.m. Pacific Time and 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to bring you thought leaders and success principles and just incredible all-out material that'll help you have an incredible career in this networking profession. It is always my joy to come here because we bring such incredible people, and I learn so much every time. But you know what? This whole vision started off because of one incredible person. We got together and we met and absolutely fell in love with each other and just really wanted to work together. And so we came together and we decided to brainstorm, how can we serve this profession? Because so many people had been coming to us and saying, we want to know how to do what we do. We don't have mentorship. Can we connect with you? We love your heart. We love your authenticity. There were so many different things we were hearing. And so we said, you know what? When people call, how about we answer? And so that's why we teamed up to bring this to all of you here at Wise Women Weekly, so with the occasional wise guy. So it's a lot of fun to be back here with you all again, and I'm excited. So welcome. This is going to be a fun day today, you guys. Robin?
Oh, Monty, you do such a beautiful job welcoming everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And we so appreciate you taking the time out of your busy lives, and hopefully today will help you with that. So they might not be so busy, and you could have more of what you want.
That's awesome. So let's just jump right into it. And I want to kind of give a little bit of a preface. Now, we bring up thought leaders, right? Now, Robin, obviously, if those of you who know her, she is one of the best. I had no idea she was as cultured, as connected, but that she's done so many things. And, when she talked about today, she says, Monty, what do you think about, us talking about time management? And I go, hello, I need some of that in my life, because we all need to be reminded of it, because our lives can get busy and they can get away from us. And the next thing you know, you've got, just all this stuff going on at one time. And, your life, is synonymous with the word busy. But life isn't really supposed to be lived that way. And I really believe that time is currency. It's one of those things we can't get back. And really, it's our most precious thing that we need to learn how to manage well. And Robin has taught this for years and years and years. And so she is just the best of the best. And so I'm really excited to bring to you all today the co-host and co-founder of Wise Women Weekly, presented by Enlightened Networking, Robin Mascari. Can I get a whoop whoop?
Thank you, Monty. Well, it's so interesting. Monty and I have been in touch and going over all the different things we're doing in our lives and realizing that we have a lot of different roles. And I remember way back when in the mid-'80s, when I had the privilege of working with Stephen Covey, and he said early on, and this is before the 7 Habits book actually even was published, he said, teach what you want to learn. And that just touched me so deeply, because I think so many of us have an interesting challenge with that thing called, what do we do with our time, And so that began my journey before the 7 Habits book came out. There was another book, and you want me to jump in, Monty, or do you want to start?
Yeah, I want you to begin, but sharing, your history, with how you began with Covey, back in the mid-'80s.
Okay, that's great. Well, like I said, I was privileged to work with the company before the book came out. And there's another book that people have never heard of before. I don't know if you can see this. It's called Connections. And actually, this is the predecessor of the Quadrant 2 time management system, because when you look at Stephen's book on time management called First Things First, you'll notice that it says Stephen Covey and Rebecca and Roger Merrill. Well, actually, it was Rebecca and Roger who actually created the system first, and Stephen incorporated it into the 7 Habits, and most people don't know that. And this little book has been an absolute treasure in my life. And it's really based on, we have so many things going on in our lives, and there's all kinds of time management systems, and some of them are really good that they identify values and priorities, but there's typically a gap between, how do you put those together and to bridge the gap between what's really important and how we live our lives. And that's actually the foundation of the Quadrant 2 time management system. And Stephen was not the author, although he gets credit because it shows up in the good old 7 Habits book, but it came from the Connections book, which I don't think is available or in print. I just happen to be lucky enough to have read it back in the mid-'80s and have it change my life. And it always starts with an assessment. So where do you want to go with this, Monty? How should we start?
Well, I think we should first start off with, explaining to everyone what the time management matrix really is all about.
Okay, love it. Well, so often in time management, actually the word time, the concept time management is really not real because we can't manage time. Time just actually is. We all have the same amount of it. So it's not about managing our time, and it's not about being more efficient with our time. The distinction in the Quadrant 2 time management matrix is really not so much about time and efficiency, it's more about relationships and results, and it's based on what's really important. So I'll get into that in just a little bit, but it's really different than what so many of us have been trained to by using all these time management tools and scheduling things and making these lists. They usually end up as to-do lists instead of truly coming from a place that's going to create peace and balance in our lives, that's going to really allow us to live in a place that fulfills what is most important to us. So I'll jump right in and talk about it because a lot of people, some of you may have been introduced to this concept and some may not. So I'm not going to do a whole 7 Habits overview, but I am going to do Habits 1, 2, and 3 just to give a context, and then I'll jump into the matrix itself. How's that?
That's perfect. Love it. Let's go.
Okay, let's do it. So the first 3 habits in the 7 Habits, remember it's called the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Right. It's not successful, it's effective. And it's not efficient, it's effective. So coming from that perspective, the first 3 habits are actually based on our personal effectiveness. And habit 1 is the habit of proactivity. It's really the habit of personal vision. It's that we are responsible for our life. We write the script. It is our life. And some people, if we don't start out with that one, that's where a lot of people end up being a victim in life. And, they think that someone else is in charge or whatever, pointing the finger out there. But basically, habit 1 is called proactivity, and it's the habit of personal vision. So then we move to habit 2, which is called begin with the end in mind, and this is the habit of personal leadership. And it's interesting about leadership. More people spend time planning their vacations than they do their lives or leading their lives. And so in order to lead our lives effectively, we need to actually design and get really clear about what is important. And where Stephen comes from in this begin with the end in mind is developing a personal mission statement. And our personal mission statement is really based on what is important, what are our guiding values, and that we all have different roles in life. And of those roles, and we have a choice of which roles we have. And I'll get into that as we get into planning later on. But basically, in habit 2, begin with the end in mind, it guides our proactivity. We create a mental image of what we want to create. And then we get to habit 3, which is first things first, which is where the time management matrix exists. It's the habit of personal management. It's our day-to-day operations and priorities that flow from our mission based on our proactivity, and they translate what's important to us in our lives into our daily activities. Okay, ready for what's next, or should I keep going?
Yes, keep going.
Okay, so now we get into the matrix itself, and this is what really was it truly a paradigm shifter for me personally, because I had done so many different time management classes, ABC 1, 2, 3, prioritize, plan your week, plan your day, and it just became overwhelming to me. When I was introduced to the Quadrant 2 time management matrix, everything shifted, because it's really based on the distinction between important and not important, urgent and not urgent. So what I invite everyone to do is, and I should have said this early on, is have a piece of paper in front of you, a full piece of paper, and draw a line midway vertically and midway horizontally. And on the top left of box, you'll have 4 boxes. You write urgent. And in that box, you write number 1. The top right box is not urgent, and that's box number 2. Along the left side, on the top left, it says important, and the bottom left, it says not important. The bottom left quadrant is number 3, and the bottom right is number 4. So what I'm going to do is go through each one of these. So it's called the Quadrant 2 Time Management Matrix, and the first box, when we look at it, is urgent and important. So what are those things? What are things that are urgent, important? They're things that are in your face, and they're really important. So if a crisis happens, an accident happens, an illness happens, something happens to your child, you have to immediately be with whatever that is. So they're pressing problems, could be deadlines, it could be all kinds of things, but they're things that you absolutely must attend to in that moment. Quadrant 2 is important but not urgent, and we're going to talk mostly about this quadrant, but I just want to give an overall perspective, and then we'll get into the details. And Quadrant 2 is something that is not urgent, so it's something that requires a muscle, but it is really important. So these are things like planning and preparation and recreation and self-development, relationship building, and when I say true recreation that provides that fulfillment and true rest and recreating ourselves. It's purposeful. It's a time to really spend time empowering others, relating to others, deep connection with people. Quadrant 3, not important and urgent. So again, when it's urgent, it means it's in our face, but it's not important. So things that could be in Quadrant 3 are things like the telephone rings, or the ding that says you've got mail, or a text message coming in these days, things like that become distractions. They're really present for us, but they're not necessarily important. And then Quadrant 4 is not important and not urgent. Those are things that are basically time wasters, things like trivia, junk mail, spending too much time scrolling around, whether it's on social media or television. Television can be a Quadrant 2. It can start out being true recreation. You're going to watch a game that really is a show that really is satisfying to you, but then there seems to be this magnet at the other side of our backside that gets stuck to the couch and keeps us long after that show's over to the next show, the next show, the next show, and before we know it, it used to be there'd be this little fuzz on the TV screen. Well, I think that's 24/7 now. So it can shift from one quadrant to another. Having certain conversations with people that is when people are being a victim, or they're whining, or they're talking about other people, all those kinds of things could be absolute time wasters. Okay? So, Monty, how are we doing?
We're doing really, really good. Now, hopefully everyone is really understanding that. 'Cause as I'm seeing this, I love that, because a lot of times we make the unimportant things important. And even when you mentioned right here in the unimportant file, when you were talking about, junk mail and social media and maybe sometimes too much TV, I think it's easy to drift. There was a book that I read that from an upcoming author that's going to be on our show here, and it talked about drifters and how easy it is to do that. And so I think being able to have a system like that keeps us from drifting into things and really prioritizing, different things that we need to handle in the moment and things that we can, do more planning and preparation with. So this is really, really good. So do you have more to add on that, or do we go on to the next question?
Well, just a little bit. If we're going to really label each of these quadrants, Quadrant 1 is really daily reality. It's the stuff that happens. And Quadrant 2 is about quality, and that is quality in all the dimensions of our life. And we're going to get into more conversation about each one of these. Quadrant 3 is deception, because we think it's important because it's urgent, but it's not. And then Quadrant 4 is just basically a waste. So I want to talk a little bit more about what happens when we spend time in the different quadrants. And let's start out with if we spend, there's so many people that say, I feel so stressed. And a lot of stress comes from dealing with a lot of crisis. And a lot of crisis shows up because we haven't taken the time. Let's look at our car. We had a blowout on the freeway. Well, if we would have really watched our tires, that probably wouldn't have happened. If we would have, taken better care of our bodies, we many times can alleviate some of the things that happen if we don't, whether, we don't get enough sleep, or we, our resistance gets low because we're eating too much sugar. And this is a really interesting time of the year, why so many people at this fourth quarter of the year end up with illnesses, because the consumption of sugar increases in the fourth quarter, starting with Halloween and going all the way through the holidays. So I invite everyone, if you want your immune system to be strong, you don't need to buy into, oh, I always get sick at this time of year. Well, just I invite you to watch your sugar intake and notice that can make a big difference in your immunity. So what happens is burnout, crisis management, it's like we're always putting out fires when we're living in that Quadrant 1. Now, results that happen from Quadrant 3, which is the urgent and not important, again, it can be crisis management, and it's very short-term focused. We might not be paying much attention to goals and what's really important, and we can feel out of control, and some relationships can get broken. Quadrant 4 is really kind of irresponsibility, and it is total waste, truly total waste. And people lose their jobs because they're spending too much time in Quadrant 4, and someone sees they're not being effective with the time they're getting paid for. So a lot of things can happen. And what happens, the results when we're in Quadrant 2 is, we have a sense of balance and vision and perspective in life. We have quality relationships. Our physical things, whether it's our bodies or our automobiles or our homes, are in good order because we've taken care of them. So things flow easier, and there's a lot less crisis happening because of that. Mm-hmm. So, Mani, what do you want to ask me?
Wow. How do you determine, because a lot of people, when you're mentioning here, Robin, some people live in certain quadrants, and I think it's really important to have balance in your life, how has this system, allowed you to balance out your professional career and your personal life, and what was your system for being able to find that balance? Because life happens, we know that, right? And sometimes there will be crisis moments, and then there's sometimes you find yourself, here kind of, maybe wasting some time. You got to get yourself right back on track. How do you find that balance?
Well, that's a wonderful question, Mani, and I think I want to kind of give a little context to that, and I think this might answer some other things. When I was introduced to this and I started to get it, because I actually facilitated a course on the 7 habits of highly effective people every week. And it was 7 weeks for each one of the habits, and I did it for many years, and every time I did it, it would just go internal at a deeper level, and I would get the brilliance of this program in ways that I couldn't even articulate. And when Stephen talked about the different leverage of the different quadrants, it made a huge impact on me and my time. And so I want to share a little bit about what does that really mean, because when we talk about working harder, working smarter, working faster, it's not really about that. It's working in a way that honors our relationships and helps us get the results we want. So when we talk about investing our time, and this is where I said this isn't about managing our time, it's about our relationship with time. So the first thing that always happens is that we have to have an awareness of what is our relationship. And I think if we take a look at ourselves in true honesty, and part of our homework was every 15 minutes we had to jot down for a period of time what quadrant we were living in. Now, I know some of us can pay attention to other people in our lives and realize, there's some people that just live in high drama, and there's some people that seem to get a lot more done and are very calm and peaceful. It's like, why is that? What's the difference? So let's imagine we have $10 and we invest it in each one of the different quadrants. Okay, you want to play?
Yes.
All right. So if we put $10, Monty, into quadrant 1, and what are we going to get back? It's urgent and important. Just guess. It doesn't matter.
I'm guessing what my return is going to be?
Yeah.
Urgent and important. Let's say 10%.
Okay, so we actually, because it is important and it's urgent and it has to be handled, we're actually going to get back what we put in. We're not going to make anything. We're not going to lose anything, okay? Mm-hmm. And I'm going to actually go through the other two, and then I'm going to really ask you on the other one, because that one's the one that makes the most sense. So if we invest $10 in quadrant 3, it's not important. So that means that's a little clue that we're going to be losing something. But it is urgent. We're going to actually lose half of it. Okay? In quadrant 4, which is waste, so $10 in, we get zip back. Okay? Now, the big one is when we're investing $10 into quadrant 2, which is the most leveraged of all the quadrants. It's where the quality things actually happen. It's where we really are paying attention to what is really most important, what we value in whatever area of our life. So what do you think we'd get back, Money?
I think that we'll get, I think we'll double. We'll get at least 100%. All
right. Well, that's a very good guess. And this is what's really fascinating, and this is what was quite shocking to me, is it is the most leveraged of all the quadrants, and we actually get 100 times back. So we would get $1,000 back. So what shifted for me when I learned that, Monty, was that if I put just a little bit of time, just a little bit into quadrant 2, and so when I think about, okay, I'm waiting in traffic, instead of, thinking of it as wasted time, I am getting from point A to point B, I could actually be filling my mind with things that are valuable. I could be envisioning what I want this meeting to be like. I could do the begin with the end in mind. I could envision, I could do some planning of how I'm going to be spending my time. And so realizing that those little bits of time and you get 100-fold back is a valuable thing. So those little minutes here and there can actually be used in a very, very valuable way. So what do you think about that?
There's 3 words that I just wrote down about quadrant 2, and that was prepared. I wanted to kind of talk to myself and see what I felt like energetically. Prepared, relaxed, and effective.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. And so in response to your question, it's really, that is the shift that changed my life.
Wow.
Personally and professionally, when I really got that. And I know it's so easy for so many of us to get into judgment about how we're spending our time and not spending our time, and to realize, I was sitting on the ground, with one of my dogs in my lap this morning, and looking into his eyes and just realizing that's not a waste of time. at all.
Oh my
That's
gosh, wow.
Yeah, and I was, I haven't had any of my own children, but I was imagining a mother with her new baby. It's like, how precious is that? Because you've been through that one.
Wow. You know what? That was really, really, yeah, that hit me. That hit me.
Yeah.
That wasn't a waste of time.
No, no. And taking the time to really be with people, and that's what I wanted to talk about with Quadrant 2, is when we distinguish between more, better, faster, working harder and smarter versus, developing important relationships and getting results as the focus. It's a very different paradigm than what most of us are raised with. So when we take a look at Quadrant 2, so much of it is about relationships. And I remember Stephen Covey saying he had 9 children. Stephen passed away a few years ago, and it was really, really beautiful the way he talked about his children, because each one of them was absolutely precious. He would make a date with each one of his children every month, so that means 9 different dates, and he would have a date with each one of them and have quality time with that one child every month, so they knew it was all about them, and they would have dad's undivided attention. Now, how often do parents, and this isn't about getting into judgment, but realizing how valuable the quality relationships are with each one of the people in our lives that are important, our spouses, our children, our siblings, of really taking the time, because it's important but not urgent, so we have to act on that. So being a mom, Lonnie, how does that relate to you?
It relates to me a lot because that's something that we do, and they call them mommy and son dates. And it's just with that one child, and they look forward to those, and my husband does the same thing. And so that they're able to get their individual attention from me, and then they're able to get their individual attention with him. And there are things that we all do together, as a family. I posted on Facebook, we were all out to lunch yesterday, and it was a joy to be able to laugh and spend that time with them. But that's really, really special, because that's something that we have to make sure that we balance, and that's something that we're actually, so I owe Covey, because that was supposed to be what we were going to do today. He asked me, he said, I'm ready for my mommy and son date, and so I said, okay, we'll do it tomorrow. So we'll make it up. I'll make it up to him tomorrow. But absolutely, that's something that is really important, and we build such fond memories, because those are the things that are important, because at the end of the day, we're doing a lot when it comes to building our brands, with building our businesses, going to work, having our careers, becoming networking professionals and studying and all those things. But when you said that, you talked about that balance and being able to look in your dog's eyes, that hit me, in a special place, because I'm like, wow. That, and to be able to say this is not a waste of time, because it used to be, before I learned the importance of this, that I would, my mind would always be racing about my to-do list. I would be sitting, and it would be, okay, I have to, I love you, come here, give me, okay, I got to get this done first. Okay, I love you, but I got to get this done first. But that's why this is so timely with what you're doing, here and now, and even as things are transitioning and blossoming, even more, career-wise, and all kinds of incredible things and opportunities, as are happening. I have to remind myself of the importance of having that balance. And so I was really grateful that you were sharing this today.
Yay! Well, you brought up something else really important, and we take a look at our families and our loved ones, and I'm in business with my husband, and once in a while we have to stop and say, what, we want our relationship to be more about than just business. So we have to have dates with each other, and say, we're not going to talk about business from this period to this period, and when we're dealing with the people in our businesses, to give them our undivided attention, to be totally present. It's so easy in our world to multitask, whether we're reading emails or washing dishes, and I certainly am guilty of some of that, because sometimes we think, well, multitasking is more efficient. But when we're dealing with relationships, giving someone our undivided attention, being totally present. And I have a chair in my bedroom. It's my purple chair. And people know that when I'm in my purple chair, that it's just them. And there isn't anything else going on. And there may be a puppy that sneaks in the room or something, but for the most part, it's 100% being present with them. And that kind of quality time when we're with our people and asking questions and truly listening. We're going to have a wise guy on in the near future who is a master at listening, because it's something that I think is one of the most important things that we don't get a lot of education on, but being 100% present. And even if it's for a few minutes, and not trying to multitask and do other things, and give our children, give our teammates, give our spouses that personal 100% attention is crucial to developing the relationships.
Absolutely, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I know earlier I said that I think of time as a form of currency. What do you think about that?
Well, like I said a few minutes ago, it is. And how, and you said it right in the beginning, when it's done, it's done. It's spent. We don't get it back. Time is our most precious commodity. So if we truly want to get the most out of it, it's really looking at where do we get the greatest leverage from it. And the wisest people, the most effective people, the most successful people understand how to leverage time, leverage resources, leverage people to get the results they're looking for. So it is a currency, and when we look at it from that perspective of leverage, it's very, very different. So I do invite people to really take a look and heighten your own awareness of how you're spending your time. And see how that currency is flowing in your life, if you're getting the leveraged impact that is available, or is it actually getting wasted? And I in our business, we talk about business volume, and there's no BV and TV. There's lots of fun ways to play with that one. Personally, we didn't have cable television for years, but when the Olympics came on, I wanted to have it, and I don't hardly know how to use it. We did watch the World Series, and that was great. But anyway, it's really looking at where is our time spent and being aware, and then having this muscle to choose, what is the best way that's going to really help us get more of what we truly want.
I completely agree with you. And I was thinking about how many people, talk about, how they're out of time. There's not enough time in a day, and many don't even know where to begin. They can hear information like this, but how do you suggest that they begin the process to really be able to begin balancing their own lives?
I love that, Monty. Well, you did the perfect segue into what is next, and how do we take that step to make that connection and fill in that gap between what's important and what we're choosing to do with our lives. So again, this is what I learned from Stephen many years ago. He is, we call it time management because that's what people can relate to. So what is the system that can help us get there? And he talks about, if people do weekly, daily to-do lists, and a lot of people do that. What am I going to do today? Or what are my big rocks for today? And if that's all we do is a daily to-do list, that will actually keep us more in our quadrant 1, which is important and urgent. And we may get some of the big rocks done, but is it truly going to be moving us towards what's really, really important? And then some people say, well, I've got a monthly calendar and I fill in my appointments on a monthly basis. And he said, well, that's actually too big. Looking at things a month in a glance. And it's nice to have a monthly calendar, but it's not the planning tool. So when we take a look at one of the most important quadrant 2 activities, which is called planning, the first step is what we talked about earlier, is identifying what's important, what are our values, and then identifying our roles. And this is something that was, again, a new piece for me, because I didn't really break up my life into different roles. And all of us have several roles in life. And if we have too many, it can definitely stress us out. So 5 to 7 roles is plenty of roles to have. So for instance, we may have a role, you've got a role as a mother, and you've got a role as a spouse, and you've got a role as a sister and a daughter. So you have your family roles, and it depends on how close family is, on how much time is spent in those, but sometimes it's good to really be specific. and I'll get into some examples in a few minutes. And then we have our roles with our work, and sometimes we have several different roles with our work, and I know, Mani, you have many, and so do I. So we want to identify what those different roles are. We have a role, a community role. You know, it may be PTA, it may be church, it may be, you know, something else where we are involved in our community. Then there's another role called self. And interestingly enough, a lot of people forget this one, which is kind of really the most important one when I learned about the 7 habits and how, you know, sharpening the saw, taking care of ourselves physically, spiritually, emotionally. You know, if we take care of ourselves on all those different dimensions, it really, really, really helps each one of the other habits be more effective also. So let's say we have all these different roles. So we identify our different roles. And then having a weekly plan is what Stephen recommended is the most effective way to really keep our lives in a state of balance. And I know that when I did this, and I'm being very honest right now and very transparent, and I'm doing this, and you know, when Stephen says teach what you want to learn, this is a great refresher for me to get me back into what I know helps me be my most effective self. So identifying the roles, and then on a weekly basis identifying a few key goals within those roles. On a bigger perspective, with each role, you might want to have a monthly and a yearly goal. But as Darren, what's Darren's last name? I'll think of it in a second. Darren Hardy. Yes. Darren Hardy says, he goes, you know, we want to, you know, true success and effectiveness comes from little things done consistently over time. So what we want to do is identify these roles and then take a look at each one of these roles and say, okay, this week, what can I do within that role that's going to move me towards my bigger goals? What are a few little things? So it's, again, the consistent things that we do on a regular basis that get us. It's not the big, huge things. It's the little things done consistently, which is truly the common denominator of people that are most effective and successful in life. So I want to show you a picture of what that looks like. And you know, it doesn't have to look like this, but I don't know. Can you see this okay? Is it visible?
Somewhat for me. I'm not sure how it looks for everyone else.
All right. Well, basically, the roles are on the outside here, and you know, and each one of these roles, then you pick the goals for those roles, and then you schedule out during the week. Now, one of the bigger mistakes that a lot of people make, saying, well, I have this appointment here, there, wherever, and they schedule those first. And here again, it's pay ourselves first, because then we will be more effective for everything else. And it's so easy to make and break an appointment we have with ourselves. So for instance, let's say exercise is something really, really important. So you do your self role first. Again, we're looking for leverage. If we take care of ourselves physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially, then we will be able to give that much more with all our other roles. So let's use exercise and starting out, okay, when and how many days am I going to exercise, and put it in. Now, always schedule and pencil, because stuff happens. You know, Quadrant 1 does happen. There are certain things that will happen out of our control. But at the same time, we'll have less Quadrant 1, less of those urgent and important if we take more time to do planning. We're not going to have a major breakdown in a relationship if we've really built that quality time to be with people because the trust is there. But if it's not, we can have a serious breakdown that turns into an urgent and important. So, you know, exercise is a good example. Schedule in when you're going to do it and how many days, and then go through each one of the different roles and put something in there. And I remember years ago when my grandparents were alive, it's easy. They lived in another state. It's easy to not, you know, be in touch regularly. And my parents had a wonderful family ritual that we stayed in touch every Sunday when we moved away. And so we did that with grandparents also. And it was just a way to have some consistency in the relationship and have regular connection with people that are important, and it's easy to not remember. And let's say, you're someone who likes to remember birthdays. You schedule those in. Are you going to send a card? Are you going to send an email? Are you going to pick up the phone? How are you going to acknowledge that person? So plan that into your weekly plan. So you're planning things and taking the time to review and take a look at the bigger picture is also very important. So you go through each role and you pick the goals, and then you schedule out the goals throughout your week. So is this making sense, Monty?
Yes, a lot. A lot. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, good. So to remember, and I love this one, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing.
Yes.
And so often we get caught in other people's main things. But if we've actually taken the time to really identify, what is really important to me is having quality relationships with people on my team. And I know in the business model that we're in, we talk about products, we talk about business, and community is also really important. How do we have regular connection with our community? And in the world these days, there's something called Facebook, and there's Facebook groups, and a lot of teams use them to communicate with their teams, which is a wonderful way to build community. Mm-hmm. There could be lots of other ways. So what are some ideas you have, Monty, of how we can actually develop more consistency in building our relationships with the people that are most important in our business?
Well, I love what you just shared there, Robin, about, different ways that we're able to bring each other together. And I love doing things like checking in with them like once a week. So I like to do conference calls where I'm not just speaking at people and giving them information, where I'm allowing us to commune and talk and ask questions and give up, motivation and, and just really, just hear their hearts. And those things are really, really important. And those have been things that have been great for connection and to be able to share appreciation and all of those great things. And so when you mentioned birthdays and things like that, I love making sure that we let people know that we celebrate them and that we are excited about their presence in their life. And so I like doing that, to be able to have that happen on a weekly basis. And if it doesn't happen on a weekly basis, at least it has to happen on a monthly basis in order to keep camaraderie and to keep those relationships strong and to be able to reach out and say, hey, I'm thinking about you.
That's so beautiful, Monty. Conference calls are a wonderful way to build community. And I know that one business I was in, we would have a daily call every morning. And for some people, that was their lifeline. In our business model, people live all over the place. And now we have so many different kinds of technology. And, being able to use a Google Hangout is fabulous because we can see each other. And it's so wonderful that I get to see you every week, Monty.
Ditto.
And you could do Skype calls with your grandkids. There's so many different ways to be in touch. But like you said, appreciating people, taking time to acknowledge them and appreciate them, not necessarily for just an achievement, but actually for just who they be. Yes. And there's a distinction there that I think is really important because not everyone comes to our business because they're wanting to make more money. Some people come to our business because they want to be connected. They want to feel a sense of belonging. So having a vehicle where people can do that is a really valuable part of our business model. It's absolutely a Quadrant 2 activity. So what other questions do you have for me, Monty?
Well, I think the final one is, well, actually, you already answered. I think you already answered the questions in terms of how we plan. That was where I was going with that. And I think that everything that you shared today was really, really impactful. And because it helps you to understand where you live and what quadrants. I think I've probably been in all four, at some point in my life, and in different times, And so to be able to understand, that means that we can now transition and say, okay, maybe I'm living in quadrant 4 right now, but how do I move to a quadrant that's more effective? Or maybe I'm living in crisis mode all the time where I'm constantly putting out fires, but how do I, get to that point where and I identify things that may not be, urgent or absolutely, must right now. So being able to identify those things and then to be able to schedule or align those things It's really important. But I think the most important thing for me was learning about the importance of Quadrant 2, because I did not know that, it just was, it's new. Like I say that all the time. When we hear things in a different way, it makes a different impact, for us. And so that's what happened for me. And so I'm like looking at this, because when you do plan and you do prepare, and you do make time for recreation and connection, you live the life that I believe that we're designed to live, and not, in all of the other craziness where we're effective, we're showing up big in the world, we're shining, yet we're also connecting and having those heart-centered moments that are so special. That's what makes life worthwhile, right? So I love, love, love all that you had to share. Do you have any final words before we close it out?
A few, and I'm going to read some things from Stephen, because, why do we do all this? It's there's so many ways to get distracted in our world, and it's so easy to do things that may or may not be reflective of what's important. So I just want to do a quick review, which is something a lot of us haven't done, is really stop and take the time to ask what is really, really important. What are our top values? And Stephen would talk about to live, to love, to learn, and to leave a legacy. Mm-hmm. And that's really what he was about so much. And, when we look at each one of those areas, if we look at self-awareness, what is my current situation and what is my paradigm of quality of life? To live, to love, to learn, to leave a legacy. And in the area of conscious, what is within me to fulfill? What are the principles that will produce quality of life results? When we take a look at our will, what choices do I need to make to fulfill my needs and capacities? What scripts do I need to rewrite? When we become aware is when we can actually choose to change these things. And that's why I say really taking the time to really assess, not from a judgmental place, but just realize, I realized that, after dinner, I had that magnet on the back side of my butt, and it just got stuck to the TV, and maybe I want to do something differently. Or, a ritual every morning when you get up, and that's something I'm working on. One of our guests in the future is actually Janet Atwood. She and her husband Chris wrote a wonderful book on rituals and how powerful they are to improve the quality of our life. So again, it's the little things done consistently with mm-hmm. the people that are important and with ourselves. And then finally, what are the quality of life results I desire, and what can I do to create them? To live, to love, to learn, and to leave a legacy. And Stephen had a really, I felt so privileged that I got to work with him in the early days. He had written several spiritual books for his church, but his book, The 7 Habits, was really his first public book. And I got to be very involved in helping with the publicity and getting a lot of coverage and getting to know Stephen personally, and truly being in his presence was a gift, because he was constantly striving and working on himself. He was, he was a brilliant intellect, but his life was his message. That's what Gandhi used to say. Someone said, "What is your message?" He goes, "My message is my life." And I got to meet his brother, who he actually held in such high esteem. His name was John, and I got to spend time with John and really realize why Stephen held him in such high esteem, and work with Roger Merrill and many people from the organization. It was a very small business when I was there. There was only 23 people, and I was out in the field, one of the very few independent people that were presenting the work and bringing people to an executive development class. But more importantly, it was constantly, just being immersed in an environment where people were committed to do the work. And it's a stretch. It's a Quadrant 2 activity to take the time to work on yourself, to take the time to live in those questions. What is really important? What do I really want more of? What can I do even better? And so instead of getting into judgment, It's like, what worked well and what could I do even better? So we want to constantly live in that place and come from a place of being really gentle with ourselves and take a step. I invite everyone to, really look at your life, look at your business, look at your family, your relationships, look at your home, your vehicles, your possessions. How are you caring for them? Whatever they are, because they're precious and they will last a lot longer, and the quality of our life will be a lot better if we really put more attention into that quadrant 2, which is the quadrant of quality. So any final comments, Monty?
It was beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You all got to hear it from Robin herself, who has spent so many years embodying this principle and teaching these principles to so many people. These are the types of things that we need to learn to be successful, and not only to learn, but to be able to put into practice. So this was awesome for me, Robin. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. She is just, come on. She's amazing. You guys know that.
Thank you, Monty, and thank you everyone for being with us, and most importantly for being willing to be a student and take the time to do the work on yourself. It takes courage to go to a new place, to do the deeper work, and to live in those important questions. So we are blessed that you're with us, and you'll be able to find this link on Wise Woman Weekly for a week, and then we'll have the YouTube available. So thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.